The desert wind howled outside my window that night, carrying with it the kind of cold that sinks straight into your bones. Phoenix in January can surprise you like that. One moment, the sun warms your face, and the next, the darkness brings a chill that makes you question everything you thought you knew about this place. I sat on the front porch of my in-laws' house, clutching my 5-year-old son Danny against my chest. His little body trembled, not just from the cold, but from the shouting he had just witnessed. The tears on his cheeks had dried into salty trails, and his breathing had finally slowed into the rhythm of exhausted sleep. Behind me, the front door had slammed with such force that I could still feel the vibration in my spine. My mother-in-law's words echoed in my skull, sharp as broken glass. "Get out. Take your son and get out of my house. You are nothing but a curse on this family." I was 32 years old, and I had just lost everything. Before I continue, I want to thank you for being here with me. I share stories like this one every single day, and if you enjoy them, subscribing to the channel would mean the world to me. Now, let me take you back to where this nightmare truly began. My husband, Thomas, had been the love of my life since the day I met him at a community college in Tucson. He was studying engineering, and I was working toward my nursing degree. He had this way of looking at me that made me feel like the most important person in the world. When he proposed after 2 years of dating, I said yes without a second thought. His family had money, old Arizona money from real estate and land development, but Thomas never cared about any of that. He wanted to build something of his own. We got married in a small ceremony, much to his mother's disappointment. Mrs. Evelyn Mitchell had wanted a grand affair, something that would make the society pages. But Thomas and I just wanted each other. We moved into a modest apartment in Phoenix, and for 3 beautiful years, we built a life together. When Danny was born, Thomas cried. He held our son in his arms and whispered promises about the father he would be, the life he would give us. Then came the day that shattered everything. Thomas had been working on a major development project in Scottsdale. It was his biggest deal yet, something that would finally prove to his family that he could succeed on his own terms. He had to drive out to meet some investors near Flagstaff, a 3-hour trip through the desert. That morning, he kissed Danny on the forehead, and then kissed me, long and slow. "I will be back by dinner," he said. "Save me some of that meatloaf you make." Those were the last words I ever heard him say. His car was found 3 days later, abandoned on a remote stretch of highway near Winslow. The driver's door was open. His wallet and phone were still inside, but Thomas was gone. Vanished. As if the desert had simply swallowed him whole. The police searched for weeks. They brought in dogs, helicopters, volunteers. Nothing. No body, no trace, no explanation. Eventually, they ruled it a probable accident combined with exposure. They theorized he had wandered into the desert disoriented and succumbed to the elements. His body, they said, might never be found. I refused to believe it. Thomas knew the desert. He had grown up hiking these trails with his father. He would never just wander off and die. But nobody listened to the grieving widow. After Thomas was declared legally dead, his family's true colors emerged. I had always known that Mrs. Evelyn disapproved of me. She thought I was beneath her son, a girl from a working-class family with no social standing. But while Thomas was alive, she kept her contempt hidden behind tight smiles and backhanded compliments. Without him, she had no reason to pretend. "Move into the family house," she had said, her voice dripping with false concern. "You cannot raise Danny alone in that tiny apartment. Let us help you." I should have known it was a trap. For 2 years, I lived under her roof and under her thumb. I worked double shifts at the hospital to pay my way, but she demanded I hand over most of my paycheck to cover household expenses. When I protested, she reminded me that I was living in her house, eating her food, benefiting from her generosity. My father-in-law, Mr. Harold, said nothing. He simply retreated into his study with his whiskey and his silence. Every penny I earned went to her. I barely kept enough to buy Danny new shoes when he outgrew his old ones. But I endured it because I had nowhere else to go. My own parents had passed away years before, and I had no siblings. Thomas's family was all I had left. And Danny needed stability. He needed a home. I tried so hard to make it work. I cooked their meals, cleaned their house, and swallowed every cruel word that came my way. When Mrs. Evelyn said I was the reason her son was dead, that I had brought bad luck into the family, I bit my tongue until it bled. When she told Danny that his father would still be alive if he had married someone better, I held my son while he cried and assured him it was not true. But on that January night, everything fell apart. Danny had been playing in the living room when he accidentally knocked over an antique vase, a family heirloom that Mrs. Evelyn treasured more than anything. The sound of it shattering brought her running, and when she saw the pieces scattered across the hardwood floor, something in her snapped. She screamed at Danny, called him a clumsy fool, a burden, just like his worthless mother. When I stepped between them to protect my son, she turned her fury on me. "You have been a parasite in this house for too long," she spat. "You and your son are nothing but reminders of my dead child. I want you gone. Tonight." Mr. Harold stood in the doorway, watching. He said nothing as his wife threw my suitcase onto the front lawn. He said nothing as she pushed me out the door and slammed it behind me. And so there I was, sitting on the cold porch with my sleeping son, wondering where we would go. I walked for what felt like hours, dragging my suitcase behind me while carrying Danny in my arms. My feet ached, and my back screamed in protest, but I kept moving. I had to find shelter for my son. Eventually, I found myself at a bus station downtown. It was nearly midnight, and the station was populated by the lonely and the lost, people whose lives had taken wrong turns just like mine. I found a bench in a quiet corner and sat down, pulling Danny close to keep him warm. He stirred in his sleep, and his small hand reached up to touch my face. "Mommy, where are we going?" I did not have an answer. Just then, a pair of headlights cut through the darkness and stopped directly in front of the station entrance. A sleek black Mercedes, clearly out of place in this run-down neighborhood. My heart began to race. Who would be here at this hour in a car like that? The driver's door opened, and a woman stepped out. She was younger than me, maybe late 20s, with auburn hair and sharp features that I recognized immediately. It was Caroline, Thomas's younger sister. I had not seen her in over 2 years. She had left the family shortly after Thomas's funeral, disappearing without a word. Mrs. Evelyn had declared her dead to the family, calling her an ungrateful traitor. But here she was, looking polished and confident, nothing like the timid girl I remembered. She walked directly toward me, her heels clicking against the concrete. "Helen," she said, her voice calm but urgent, "get in the car." I stared at her, my mind spinning with questions. "How did you find me? What are you doing here?" "There is no time to explain." She glanced around nervously. "Please, just get in. I have something I need to show you. Something about Thomas." The mention of my husband's name sent a jolt through my entire body. What about Thomas? Caroline looked me directly in the eyes, and I saw something there that I could not quite identify. Fear, determination, and something else. Hope. He might still be alive. Those 4 words changed everything. I did not hesitate. I gathered Danny in my arms, grabbed my suitcase, and followed Caroline to the Mercedes. She opened the back door for me, and I carefully placed my sleeping son on the leather seat before climbing in beside him. The warmth of the heated interior immediately began to thaw my frozen limbs. Caroline got behind the wheel and pulled away from the station without another word. We drove in silence through the empty Phoenix streets, the city lights blurring past my window. My mind was a hurricane of questions, but I forced myself to wait. Whatever she had to tell me, she would tell me when she was ready. Finally, she pulled into the parking garage of a high-rise apartment building in a neighborhood I had never visited before. She led me and Danny up to a spacious apartment on the 15th floor, the kind of place I could never have afforded in a lifetime of nursing shifts. "You can stay here tonight," she said, gesturing to a guest bedroom. "Let Danny sleep, then we will talk." I tucked my son into the soft bed, kissing his forehead and whispering that everything would be okay. I prayed I was not lying to him. When I returned to the living room, Caroline was sitting on the couch with a laptop open in front of her and a folder of documents spread across the coffee table. "Before I show you this," she began, "I need you to understand something. I have been investigating for 2 years. What I found goes deeper and darker than I ever imagined, and it involves our own family." She handed me a photograph. It showed Thomas with another man I did not recognize, someone older with silver hair and cold eyes. They appeared to be arguing. "Do you know who this is?" I shook my head. "That is Uncle Raymond, my father's brother. He runs the legitimate side of the family business. At least that is what everyone thinks." Caroline then explained everything. Uncle Raymond had been involved in illegal land deals for decades, using the family company to launder money and defraud investors. Thomas had discovered the truth while working on the Scottsdale project. He had found documents proving that Raymond was stealing millions from the company and bribing local officials. Thomas confronted him, Caroline continued. He threatened to go to the authorities, and that is when Thomas disappeared. "You think Raymond had him killed?" I whispered, my voice breaking. "I thought so at first," Caroline said. "But look at this." She turned the laptop toward me. On the screen was a grainy security camera image, time-stamped 3 months ago. It showed a man being escorted into a building by 2 guards. Even through the poor quality, I recognized him immediately. Thomas. It was Thomas. He was thinner, his hair longer, his face gaunt. But it was him. My husband was alive. I collapsed onto the couch, my body shaking with sobs. For 2 years, I had mourned him. For 2 years, I had believed he was dead, and all along, he had been held captive somewhere, probably by his own uncle. "Where is this?" I demanded through my tears. "Where is he?" Caroline zoomed out on the image. The building was a remote property in Sedona, nestled in the Red Rock Canyons, far from prying eyes. "Raymond owns it through a shell company," she explained. "I believe he has been keeping Thomas there to prevent him from talking. He needs the documents Thomas collected, but Thomas refuses to give them up." "We have to save him," I said immediately. "We have to go there now." "It is not that simple," Caroline replied. "Raymond has security, armed guards. We cannot just walk in there." "Then what do we do?" "I cannot just sit here knowing my husband is alive and suffering." Caroline looked at me with a strange mixture of admiration and determination. "We build a case, we gather evidence, and when the time is right, we strike." Over the following weeks, Caroline and I worked together like detectives in a crime novel. She had contacts I never knew about, people who could access security footage and financial records. Together, we pieced together the full scope of Raymond's crimes. But the most important discovery came from an unexpected source: Thomas's old laptop. Before his disappearance, Thomas had secretly made copies of all the incriminating documents. He had hidden them in a place only I would think to look, inside Danny's favorite stuffed bear, the one Thomas had bought him the day he was born. When I found the USB drive sewn into the bear's stuffing, I nearly collapsed from the weight of it all. Thomas had been protecting us. Even when he knew he was in danger, he had made sure the evidence would survive. The files were devastating. Bank records showing millions in embezzled funds, emails between Raymond and corrupt officials, contracts for land deals that existed only on paper, and a letter from Thomas himself, explaining everything and begging me to bring it to the authorities if anything happened to him. Reading his words, I wept. But my tears were no longer just from grief. They were from fury. The night of the rescue was the longest of my life. Caroline had contacted a private investigator she trusted, a former FBI agent named Marcus who owed her a favor. Together with a small team, we planned an operation to extract Thomas from the Sedona compound. I insisted on being there. Caroline argued against it, said it was too dangerous, but I would not back down. "He is my husband," I told her. "I have to be there when we bring him home." My son Danny stayed with a trusted friend, safe and unaware of the danger his mother was walking into. I called him before we left, told him I loved him, and promised I would see him soon. The compound was isolated, surrounded by desert and red rock formations. Marcus and his team moved silently through the darkness, neutralizing the guards one by one. Caroline and I waited in the car, watching through binoculars, our hearts pounding. Then I saw them bring Thomas out. He was weak, barely able to walk, supported by 2 of Marcus's men. But he was alive. He was really alive. I ran to him before anyone could stop me. I threw my arms around him and felt his thin body collapse against mine. He smelled different, looked different, but when he whispered my name against my hair, I knew it was him. "Helen, you found me. I will always find you." I sobbed. Always. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Marcus's team had gathered enough evidence during the raid to warrant an FBI investigation. Within days, Raymond was arrested on charges of kidnapping, fraud, money laundering, and a dozen other crimes. His empire crumbled around him. But the greatest shock came from the investigation into the rest of the family. My father-in-law, Harold, had known about Thomas's captivity all along. He had helped Raymond cover it up in exchange for his silence about certain family secrets. My mother-in-law, Evelyn, had suspected the truth but chosen to ignore it, too consumed by her own bitterness and greed to care about her son's fate. When the police came for them, Evelyn screamed that I was to blame for destroying her family. Harold said nothing at all. They both received prison sentences. Not as long as Raymond's, but long enough. Thomas spent months in recovery. The physical wounds healed, but the psychological scars took longer. There were nights when he woke up screaming, nights when he could not bear to be touched. But we faced it together, Danny and I by his side every step of the way. Caroline and I grew closer than I ever imagined. She had risked everything to save her brother, had walked away from her family's money and status to do what was right. When she and Marcus announced their engagement a year later, I cried tears of joy. And Danny, my beautiful son, grew into a strong young man who understood that family is not about blood, it is about the people who show up for you when the world falls apart. It has been over 30 years since that terrible night at the bus station. I am 65 now, with gray hair and wrinkles that tell the story of a life fully lived. Thomas passed away peacefully 5 years ago, surrounded by his family, in the home we built together. Sometimes I drive out to the desert and watch the sunset paint the rocks in shades of orange and gold. I think about the woman I was, desperate and alone on that cold January night. I think about how close I came to giving up, and I am grateful. Grateful for Caroline, who had the courage to seek the truth. Grateful for Thomas, who never stopped fighting to come home. Grateful for Danny, who gave me a reason to keep going. If you are listening to this story and you are going through something dark, something that feels impossible to survive, I want you to know this. The people who hurt you do not get to decide how your story ends. You do. You are stronger than you know. And sometimes, the miracle you are waiting for is already on its way. You just have to hold on long enough to let it find you. If this story touched your heart, show it by clicking like. Let me see how many of us have found our way through the darkness. And I am curious. Where are you listening from tonight? What time is it in your corner of the world? Leave a comment and let me know. I read every single one. For more stories like this, subscribe to Twisted RQT Stories and turn on the notification bell. I will see you in the next one.